Okay, and we are recording. Good morning.
Good morning, Ellen.
Could you state your name for the record?
Adele Phelan.
Okay, I've been pronouncing that wrong this entire time.
That's perfect. You are not the only one.
Okay, fair enough. Well, welcome to Secular Stories. You've had an opportunity to look over the questions.
I did.
Good. Anything you don't feel like answering, don't answer.
Thank you.
Okay, we can always skip things. I have to say this on the video, there are reasons for that. And if you say something and at some point you want it removed or something like that, I can always cut it out or mute it or you name it. Okay?
Good.
So, let's start with our opener. Can you tell me about the community you grew up in?
The community I grew up in. I grew up in Denver. Actually, they tell me I was born in North Denver because family was Italian. But we moved when I was about 2.5 to the house that's not much more than a mile from here.
Okay.
And I lived there until I went to the Sisters of Loretto. Oh, no, actually, I lived there till I went to college in Milwaukee. And then I went to the Sisters of Loretto in Kentucky. And then I came back to Denver about 1963.
Okay. All right. So that tells us geographically. What kind of community did you grow up in from a religious standpoint?
It was a Catholic community. Mother and father were Catholic, but not obsessively Catholic. Italian men are rather well known for not being obsessively Catholic, so that means they go to church when they need to go to church. I went to public kindergarten and Catholic grade school, high school, and college until I went to graduate school the second time, and then I went to a secular university.
Okay. That answers a question which we always ask later if you remember the question list, but don't worry about it. I want to rewind a little bit. So your family wasn't obsessively Catholic?
No.
What about the surrounding community? Meaning, in terms of who you went to church with, would you say that most of the flock, parish, I don't know what Catholics uses the term.
Yeah, the parish was a Catholic parish.
Right.
But, my friends at school were Catholic. Mm-hmm. But I had 2 friends that lived across the street, girl friends, and neither of them was raised Catholic.
Okay.
So, and the neighbors on one side were Catholic, on the other side not.
Okay.
So it wasn't like we were in a Catholic enclave.
Right. And the level of religiosity in the parish, it sounds like, was kind of variable.
No. I was taught by women in a religious order. Okay. And of course the parish priests, one was from Ireland and one was not. But it was Catholic doctrine, Catholic dogma, Catholic
everything.
Catholic catechism, memorize the catechism, get baptized, get confirmed, etc.
Okay. So within the parish, very Catholic. Outside of the parish, obviously you had friends from other brands of Christianity, other faiths?
Yes. No, mostly brands of Christianity.
Mostly different strains of Christianity. Okay. And you said that you did attend a religious school.
Yes, it was a Catholic grade school taught by the nuns in the parish. Okay. And the rectory was practically adjacent. So it was
Oh, so going to church and going to school, this was the same place?
Yes, and it still is. It's still there.
It's still there. Okay, mm-hmm. So it's been around for some
time. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And it probably wasn't brand new when you started going?
No.
Okay, so this has probably been around for the better part of a century or more?
I don't know. That's a good question. I was always there.
Okay.
And it was within 3 blocks of my house.
Okay, got it.
And as a I don't remember when I started, but as somewhere in my youth, I went to Mass every morning. I would walk to church and walk home, and then, of course, we went to Mass on Sundays.
Okay. All right. What was your, as a young person, and obviously you can divide this into ages if you feel like your impression of it changed, what was your relationship like with the church?
Well, Huh. That's a good question. Relationship with the church. It was there. I was supposed to pay attention to it, which I did.
Okay.
It was sort of I never thought about it as the church. I thought about it more as the religion, as the theology,
the faith. That's fine.
Yeah, as the faith.
Yeah, when I said the church, I didn't because it's the Catholic Church, and I'm Jewish, which means when we say the church, we pretty much always mean Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could stop. I remember my brain went the Vatican. No, but so what was your relationship like with the faith then, if that makes sense?
Hook, line, and sinker. I believed everything I was taught. Catholics, as you well know, believe everybody who doesn't get baptized in the Catholic faith, is consigned to either purgatory or, depending upon how good or bad they are, limbo or hell or someplace. So it was interesting that, you could, I really feel bad that you're not baptized. Pardon me. So I didn't have a lot of that. I mean, I didn't look at my friends and think, oh, poor you. But it's like I was Catholic and they weren't. And so you did sort of wonder, as a kid, you don't think about that. As I began to be more of an adult, it's like, wait a minute. You mean they're going to go to limbo because...
Okay, so this is an interesting point. At what can you, if you can, and if the answer is no, that's fine, because actually a lot of the times when people are answering questions about this, it's along a continuum. There's no moment where they remember something changing. At what age do you remember thinking to yourself, good Lord, all of my friends who aren't Catholic are going to hell?
I guess I knew, I didn't think it was going to hell. They were going to, if they were unbaptized, I think they went to limbo.
Okay.
And then some of them went to purgatory, and I can't remember why. Maybe because you had to expiate sins. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. I think I must have probably been in high school before I really began to think.
So you were a teenager?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think as a kid. I think I just bought it all.
Okay. So you always had friends who weren't Catholic.
Yeah.
You had friends who were Catholic. The friends of yours who were Catholic, or actually, let's say both, because everybody was Christian, so that means that there was some shared ideology there. Did any of your friends express doubts to you?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So did you have any friends who were just completely irreligious at the time?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
Not that I remember, but it wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
It
wasn't a matter of public discourse.
No, you didn't say what religion or did you go. It just wasn't. That's not what kids did.
No. Okay. Interesting. Because that's changed.
It was more. In some ways, being Italian or being, it's like it is for some people now. You don't marry. You marry another Italian. You, if you're my uncle married a woman who was not Italian and not Catholic.
And that was a big deal.
It's like, that was a big deal.
Right.
And I remember that pretty clearly.
Okay. So there was a very strong lineage component to things at the time.
Yes.
It sounds like.
But not linked specifically to the Catholic.
Just everybody.
Right.
It's like you did what your parents said. Okay.
Right.
Understood. Okay, and we said you didn't really have... You had friends from other strains of Christianity, but you didn't have friends who weren't Christian.
I don't believe so.
Okay. And
I don't think we differentiated. Religion was religion.
Right.
I don't remember any Jewish friends.
Right.
So yeah, most of them were Christian.
Right. Well, to be fair, if people weren't talking about it, there may have been some closeted ones.
That's right.
Yeah. So high school was the first time that you can recall, and the answer is you may have had thoughts about this beforehand or not. It doesn't really matter. But high school is the first time you can recall thinking to yourself, like, okay, some of the people that I know are going to limbo.
Or wherever they're going.
Yeah. Okay. But, and I happen to have some insider information here, Later on, you joined a religious order, which
Correct.
means that did not sway your faith.
No.
No.
I just, if anything, it's like, oh, that's really too bad. You know?
Right. Meaning I need to fix this.
I never needed to fix it.
Yeah.
I was never a proselytizer.
Interesting. Okay.
But it's a puzzle. It was a puzzle.
It was a puzzle.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you Catholic?
Yeah, or is there anything I can do to help? But not you need to believe this, and
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. So you went to high school. High school was also a Catholic high school.
Oh yes.
Was that also in the church or somewhere else?
Again, it was all women's, taught by the same order of nuns that taught the grade school.
Okay. So you had the same teachers like your whole life, practically.
No, the same order.
The same order. Okay.
Yeah, but not the same teachers.
Okay.
But all religion. There may have. Oh, the gym teacher. I hated gym. She was not a nun.
She wasn't a nun. Okay.
No.
So you had one teacher that wasn't a nun.
I think so. When I think back about that, I think so.
Okay.
I don't think I had any other women. Now, when I went to Catholic college,
Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah.
But I don't think in high school. I can't. If I think back, I mostly remember the nuns.
Okay. Okay. So you went to this was a thoroughly religious school.
Oh my!
What was your day like? And you can talk about high school or middle school, whatever you want. But in terms of like, how did they split the day up?
Well, it mostly was regular I got a very good education. Mostly, we had catechism, and usually the priest came in for catechism.
Right.
And you had to memorize, and then there was always
Couldn't have a nun teaching catechism.
Maybe a mix.
Okay.
And then there was always, you had to go to confession, and you had to go to, I think they had mass. I can't remember how often, but not every day. So you were very much in the culture of the church.
Okay. And you said that you felt like the secular education was actually good.
Yes.
Did that, what in terms of subject spread, was it basically the same as, well, keep in mind that what is taught in high schools now and what was taught in high schools then may have changed. So, for example, in my head, I'm thinking math,
Yes.
history of a certain persuasion,
Yes.
and at least one science a year.
Yes.
So you guys did biochem, physics, right? That progression.
No, I didn't, which was interesting.
Yeah.
I did biology, but let's see, I never did chemistry. I never did physics.
Never did physics. Okay.
They were not required. They were taught, but not required.
But biology was.
Yes, and I'm trying to. And then in math, I had to do algebra and geometry, but I didn't have to do calculus or trig or.
Okay.
And I'm really sorry about that. I mean, I wish I would have had to do more science and more math.
Okay. But you did take biology.
Oh yes.
The reason I'm asking this is that as somebody who has done these interviews before, sometimes, or had these discussions before, sometimes biology makes people question their faith. Because you learn biology and you come upon things like parasites, for example, disease, genetic mutations, things that really can be very, very awful and seem to just be natural. That didn't that did not set you off intellectually in any way. Interesting. Okay. There was no attempt to teach you young Earth creationism, it sounds like, from discussions we've had previously outside of this interview.
It was real simple. There wasn't, the literalness of it was never stressed.
Right.
It was just, the world was created, God created the world in 7 days and blah, blah, this day and this day. But
it was a narrative you had to.
It was a narrative. It wasn't, you didn't really think, oh my God, how could this thing happen in 7 days?
Meaning no one was sitting there with a ruler in their hand slapping your wrist every time you said the Earth is older than 5,000 years old.
No.
Interesting. Okay. So it wasn't very literal. But limbo was real.
Yeah.
Did anyone ask, for example, like, is this a real place, or are we speaking figuratively about that one? Or that was no. That was sort of understood.
Heaven is a place, and hell is a place.
Heaven is real. Hell is real. Purgatory is real. Limbo is real. Salvation is real. Expiation
Damnation is real.
Damnation is real.
Sin is real.
Sin is really real. Transubstantiation?
In terms of?
Transubstantiation. Is it real?
Oh, of course.
It's not figurative.
And Immaculate Conception. It's all real.
Okay. So there was a certain amount. The reason that I'm asking you this is because it is always useful, in my opinion, to understand what level of, my brain said outlandish, but that's not very polite. What level of unnatural claims, meaning claims that are outside of the laws of physics, are being made? And it seems like some were, but some were not. Right? There was sort of a mix. Right?
Yeah.
There's a place we know about. It's not measurable. You can't get there with a spaceship or a submarine, but it's real.
Mm-hmm.
But the Earth is older than 5,000 years old.
Never came up.
Never came up. No one talked about it. Okay. And I'm assuming you guys ran the full canon of the Bible, meaning Old Testament, New Testament.
You know, I don't remember much about the Old Testament. The stress was on the New Testament.
Stress was on the New Testament. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
That's my recollection.
You know, in my experience, because as you know, this interview is not completely uncolored, meaning I'm not trying to pretend that I'm a neutral party. I think it's ridiculous when interviewers do that anyway. There's a reason for that. No one wants to look too closely at the Old Testament.
Exactly.
That's the mean. That's the mean version.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So, other than that, though, meaning literature, were you guys free to read anything you wanted, or were there books you weren't supposed to touch?
The way it comes up now, it didn't. I don't remember censored books or banned, but it was a structured curriculum, and you read what you were assigned, but there was no sense of that I recall as a student. You can't read that.
Okay.
But frankly, I shouldn't speak for the world. I was probably half unconscious as a kid.
What do you mean?
I did what I didn't question much.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was I was a good kid, a good student, a good child, most of the time. I was the youngest. My sister was 8 years older, and I was much more, I think, my own person in the eyes of my mother.
Okay.
But I was a good student and mostly did what I was told.
This was both in and out of school, meaning it's not like you had a persona at school which was radically different from your persona outside.
No, I got in trouble in high school because I dated a guy that was, as if you could call it dating, I think he was supposed to be Catholic, but he wasn't, a bit of a rebel, and I don't think my folks thought that was the greatest thing in the world, and I can remember sneaking around a few times, which was unlike me.
Sure.
But, it wasn't, I never got in big trouble.
You weren't getting thrown out of class or something?
Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. Oh, gosh, no.
No. You were good.
I was a model student.
You were a model student. Okay, got it. Which means it's sort of, by extension, you were model Catholic.
Yeah.
In many ways. Okay. It sounds like.
Yeah, of course.
So that was high school.
If you run off to the convent I went to the convent when I would have been a sophomore in college.
So let's talk about that.
I was about 18.
I think for people listening to this, they may almost find it hard to believe.
So did my father.
Yeah. They may almost find it hard to believe. Most people have never met a nun in their lives, unless they're Catholic.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Or they're me, and you make a habit of talking to people on the train. But, so you went to high school. Which college did you go to?
I went 1 year to Marquette.
Okay.
Then I went into the order, so my college years were spent 1 year, 2 years in Kentucky at the novitiate. Then I went to what was called the House of Studies, and it was affiliated with Webster University, and I got my bachelor's degree at Webster College. It was Webster College, now it's Webster University.
These are all Catholic schools?
Yes.
Okay. So your freshman year, you were still...
And all by the same order of nuns.
Yeah, you were... Okay, this continuously?
Well, not Marquette.
Not Marquette.
But when I went to the... Yes, when I went to...
So that was the 1 year of your life, basically, that you did not have contact with this order?
Right.
Okay. All right. So there's certainly a thread here to be...
Yeah.
So let's get to that. What made you decide to be a nun?
Well, first of all, did you want to be a nurse? Did you want to be a secretary? Or did you want to teach? Well, I wanted to teach, and I thought these women were marvelous, and I thought God would be very happy with me if I went, and they fostered it. You know, they could see I was bright, and they could see I was a good kid, so they thought I'd be fine.
Well, let's hang on a second. So at the time, you were very much sort of told, these are the things you can do.
No. I don't think I was ever told. It's just the world you lived in. What did women do? They got married, they had children, or they didn't get married, right. and they were I had an aunt who was a secretary, a legal secretary, or they were a nurse. But no, women attorneys, women doctors, women scientists,
politicians,
wasn't on the scene.
Right.
So it was pretty clear. And the women I came in touch with, in contact with, were teachers. We had one of the neighbors of one of my non-Catholic friends. She was a nurse. The other wife was a housewife. My own mother never worked. Well, she did before she got married, but so it just wasn't in your worldview.
Just to make it clear to people who are listening, what year was your freshman year of college?
Freshman year of college. Well, let me go back. Let's see. I think I went into the religious community around 1953 or 54, so early 50s, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for sort of context, that places all of this before the 60s.
Oh, yes.
And that's the important historical,
yes,
as a context thing, because that's when what most people consider to be sort of the modern attitude about women being allowed to do pretty much whatever they want.
Okay.
I would say that really took off in the 60s.
Well, let me think about that. I was teaching, I was maybe dean of students at the time, at Loretta Heights, and the height of the hippie movement, the Vietnam, kids were on drugs. I mean, it was interesting. It was really interesting to be a counselor or a dean.
Sure.
These kids were fascinating.
I mean, they're probably coming in and bucking the trend pretty hard.
Well, yeah, and sometimes my sympathies were with the kids. Not always, but it's like, this is interesting.
You might have a point there.
Well, and then this was a great age, you don't believe anybody over 30. So I think that was a really important...
Meaning that was something they were saying?
Yeah.
Don't believe anybody over 30. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they believed it.
Meaning that anyone over 30 was...
Don't listen to them. They don't have anything to tell you.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So we're talking, sort of late 50s. You go to college. Did you already know you wanted to be a nun when you walked into college, or no?
I pretty well knew I was going to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I got a partial scholarship, I think.
Okay.
And so, I don't know. That's a good question. Why did I choose that? I don't know.
As opposed to just teaching.
As opposed to going right into the order.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you made the decision to join the community. And then you did.
Mm-hmm.
And you stayed in college, but you transferred colleges, it sounds like.
Well, I did my first year at Marquette. Then I went to the order at which they then educate you.
Wholesale.
Yeah. Until I won, this was a sad moment in my life, until I won a Woodrow Wilson Fellowship. And I could have gone to any graduate school I wanted. And the order made the decision that I was to go to St. Louis University, which was right in the city where...
So they put the kibosh on that.
Yeah, I think they thought they better not let me get too far out. I don't know what they thought.
They were concerned.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I've always thought the road not taken. What if I'd gone, to Stanford?
Oh, that way lies madness.
Yeah.
So you, at what point were you sort of officially done with indoctrination? I don't know if it's actually not fair of me to call it that, but I don't know what the process is even called indoctrination.
Probably not till I was teaching here in Denver.
Okay.
I think I was pretty.
How long of a process is this? Becoming a nun.
Well, let's see. I think you take your first vows. You vow poverty, chastity, and obedience.
Right.
And I think I did the first vows 3 years into the order, and then you do your final vows, I think, 5 years later.
This is a long process.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And it sounds, how intensive was this? Meaning, how much of the day were you spending sort of doing that as opposed to...
Oh, there's no this and that.
That's your life now.
Yeah, it's your life.
Like, you wake up, you go to sleep.
You wake up, you go to church.
Right. No, I'm saying that between those two time brackets.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing is something that is assigned, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. That's almost like the military.
Yes. You were assigned where to teach.
Yeah.
You were assigned what time to go to bed.
Yeah.
You were assigned what time to get up. You were assigned, you wore a habit.
Yeah. Were you Sister Adele?
Uh-huh.
You were Sister
Adele? Sister Adele Marie.
Sister Adele Marie, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if you did not do these things?
Wasn't a thought.
Didn't happen.
Didn't happen to
Nobody
me.
Nobody. Ah, okay. Did you have any friends? Were you with friends? Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting thing, and I think that's eventually one of the reasons I left. Eventually, you were wedded as a woman
To the church.
to God, and so close friends of either sex were not to be fostered.
Including women?
Yes.
Okay.
You were not to have, quote, personal friends. Yeah, you weren't supposed to get real close. Your whole affective life was centered on God. And that was tough on me because I'm a people person, and I'm so that I think at some point, then Pope John John the 23rd comes into the church and says we've got to open the windows. And so then I'm a young nun teaching, and we can now get out of the habit if we choose.
Ooh.
And so I volunteered.
So you could just wear regular clothing.
You could wear regular. You had to. It was
There
standard.
were rules, but it was more normal looking. It wasn't the whole.
So some of my friends and I who were teaching together, we were in.
Yeah.
We could then, because I was teaching English,
I cannot imagine what this conversation looked like with your mother superior. It's just like. Was she sort of miffed about it?
Well, I had several mother superiors,
Right.
of very different ilks, but we were, because I taught English, because I had a bit of a rebel compatriot, we were allowed to go to the film festival at the University of Denver. And little did they know what they were allowing us to do. It was Fellini, and anyway. So that's kind of the beginning. And then the real catalyst, my brother-in-law had a very severe heart attack.
Okay.
And they didn't know. It was touch and
For what, when you say that?
catalyst. I'm going to get there.
Sure.
So they give me permission to go to the hospital to be with my sister.
Yeah.
I go to the hospital and I get this picture of all of these women and men friends cooking, taking care, and I'm thinking, this is interesting. You don't need to be in this order of women to have all of these, to have this kind of community, I guess is what I was seeing, that there were different ways to be. this is at the same time that the Pope is coming in with these new ideas. And so then I went on to teach high school in a co-ed high school. And it became clearer to me with those kids. It's like, how much of this do I really believe? How much am I going to teach these kids? Am I going to teach them they're going to go to hell? If they have a French kiss, am I going to teach them that? Am I going to teach them that there is no birth control? Am I going to, how much of this am I going to? So it was a very gradual process.
So that answers a question which we always ask, which is just, was there a tipping point? And the answer is actually no, it sounds like. This was just sort of, there was a diffusion of ideas.
Yeah.
And also a realization about certain realities. It sounds to me like, maybe if I could reverse it, is one of the things that attracted you to being a nun in the first place the idea of being part of a tight-knit community?
I think it was, I'm a perfectionist by nature. I think I thought it's the perfect thing to do. I mean, perfect. Yeah. Well, when I never thought about, this is the thing I never thought about. When I began to understand I'm really not very perfect, and some of this perfection I don't want to do, it's like, oh, okay, I'll get myself out of this religious womb almost that I'm in, and see what the real world is like out there.
There's a couple of points here that I think are worth sort of exploring for a second. So it almost sounds to me like you had this image of the community you were joining. Mm-hmm. You joined it. Mm-hmm. Didn't match the image.
It really kind of did. I mean, they were, some of them, not all of them.
Yeah.
Some of them were really good, holy women.
Capital T, capital B, true believers.
Yeah, and still are.
Yeah.
Some of them not so. So it was by no means perfect. I mean.
Well, it wasn't. Meaning it was what you signed up for.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That was the whole thing, is it was what you signed up for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until
I have to say, as somebody who's not Catholic and has never been even vaguely a priest, this thing that you have to lean entirely on the church or sort of the faith or God as your only emotional support is very new to me. I had never heard this, and that tells me something. It means that after that papal bull, things changed, it sounds like. Was it a bull? I don't know.
I don't know. I still don't think they understand emotional.
Okay.
The church. I don't think they do, or they wouldn't have the stand they have on celibacy and women priests. And I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
They don't get it.
Or male nuns, for that matter.
Well, yeah.
If we're already at it,
Yeah, that's right. Male nurses.
They serve different functions.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just think the church does not really understand sexuality at all.
No.
And I don't think that they ever did, and I don't know that they ever will.
Probably not.
But at some point, it's like, wait a minute, how do you think this world gets here? And, women who didn't want any more children and had to practice, couldn't practice birth control.
All of these thoughts were bubbling up around being in this co-ed school that you were teaching in?
Toward the end of that, and then when I went on to teach in a Catholic college.
Was that a co-ed college?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then, well, it wasn't when I went, but it turned co-ed. But then I decided at some point along the way, okay, I'm going to leave I need to leave the order. And I went and spoke to my president at the time, who was a nun, rebel of her own. And she said to me, if you can do it, we can do it. If you want to leave the order and stay here as I think I was dean of students at the time, or some counselor, maybe, I can't remember. We will make that happen. And so I did.
You can see my eyebrows are inside my hair.
So I was able, as a woman who left the order, to stay hired by this Catholic institution because of its forward-thinking.
I was going to say, this is remarkably progressive.
Yes. Well, this order is progressive. Always has been, always will be.
Which order? Sisters
of Loretto at the foot of the cross. Okay. And, they were always nudging the bishops a little bit, and to this day, they're probably not beloved by...
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
I have, as you can imagine, am not deeply familiar with most of the orders within Catholicism, frankly, other than Opus Dei, because they have a history story with my people. But
no, this order was born in the United States, mm-hmm. and it didn't have all the old Europe.
Right. So you were teaching in this co-ed school, and you were thinking to yourself, and it sounds like there was a lot of thinking going on. I'm not gonna, I can't. There were ideas there you couldn't stomach, essentially.
Right. Yeah, and to be fair, I don't know how much of this I want on the tape, but
anything you want taken.
To be fair, Jerry was teaching at the same school, mm-hmm. and he taught religion. I taught English. Mm-hmm. He and his fellow priests went skiing on Tuesdays because mm-hmm. they didn't. I had all of their kids in my study hall, 100 boys and girls, and me.
Just you?
Me. And luckily, at that point, kids were much more obedient, and I get teased to this day. I had a look, and the look was, knock it off. And to help them knock it off, I said to him, we need a reading list. I need to be able to tell these kids, get your book out and read. So he and I had to work together. Mm-hmm. So, it's like, there's this whole other dynamic that one could engage in if one, so it's all that put together, all that, he was way out in front of. So there was more rebellion there with...
he was further down the timeline.
And Jerry thinks his way out of things.
Yes.
And he was, the Vatican was rattling around, as I told you, and he and some of his more progressive priests were questioning a lot more. Uh-huh. And we had a god-awful, anyway. So... It's little chinks in the armor, and finally the wall comes down.
Okay. Was there a wall coming down moment? Like a moment where you said to yourself, that's it? No, it was just a gradual... Fascinating. Okay. And so you decided to leave. You left. And you managed to keep the same position you had.
I did.
Were there, aside from that, any repercussions, good or bad?
No, people... I remember one much older nun just looking at me and kind of saying, why,
Why do you want to stop being
that? Yeah, but nobody was mean or obnoxious.
That's
or
good.
Yeah, it wasn't a good thing.
What was the first thing you did that was an unknown thing in your head?
I can tell you one thing. This goes back before I left.
Sure.
I got a fellowship, national something, I can't remember, National Humanities, something. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that allowed me to go to Stockton, California. Mm-hmm. And as part of what I had to do there, we had to go to movies. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget this. So the movie that we go to is with Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Mm-hmm. And remember the first line of the movie was, Jesus Christ, George, what a dump. And I remember thinking, isn't this interesting? If my folks back home knew I was sitting in this theater with all of these non-Catholic people, part of my, and I could watch affairs going on kind of around me, how it is at workshops. Sure. So it was a real eye-opener.
Right.
And I'm away by myself at Stockton, California.
Right? You're not in an Abbot.
No, I'm in a dorm with other people.
Hanging out.
Yeah, that probably was...
Felt unnunny.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that was the decision to leave the order. It sounds like total repercussions on your life actually were relatively minimal. compared to what I would expect personally hearing this.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And so that was that. You stayed dean of students. You remained dean of students. You kept teaching.
Yeah.
Okay. And at some point...
I'm trying to remember what happened.
Sure.
Oh, I remember what happened. We got a new president, male president, first time at Loretta Heights. And I can't remember exactly. But at some point, I decided I was going to leave there, and I went to University of Denver. A friend of mine was dean of students, and I went as assistant dean of students.
So then you went to that was a secular school now. So then things have really started rolling. All right. And we're recording. Okay. So this is part 2, as it were. Last time we were talking about this, we had gotten to the point where you were talking to me about leaving the order. So that was, you said, if I recall correctly, a lot of that was from interacting with the students, among other things.
A lot of that was
from interacting with the students over. How long were you the dean of students there at that school?
Oh no, I meant students from high school as well as from there. I don't know how long, 2 or 3 years, I would say.
Okay.
But then I went on to be acting president at a later point.
Okay.
So I was affiliated with that college for a while.
Okay. So you left, but you stayed at the school and you stayed in the church.
As I recall.
As you recall.
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Okay, so at some point you stopped going to church.
Indeed.
So that is there's 2 points here. One is when you split in the sense that you no longer said, okay, this is an infallible way to live, essentially. And then another is you actually left the church. Do you happen to remember when you were sort of confident that you did?
No, all I know, it was a very long time ago.
It was a long time. Was it a process, or did you just up and decide to stop going one day?
Now that I'm thinking about it, we got married in it'll be 53 years this October, so I can't remember when. But we were married in the church, so that gives you a sense. However, when we were married in the church, I remember saying to the priest whom we knew, I'll say love, honor, I will not say obey when it comes to the vows. So, I suppose what I'm talking about, there was some rebellion about some of what was expected of women in the church. That took a long time. It was a long time ago.
Okay. So, again, from what I recall from part 1, and I actually did go over part 1, part of what sort of moved you away from being in the order, and it seemed like that may have been a chink in sort of the armor, as it were, was essentially a basic kind of moral intuition that there was an outsized amount of punishment that could theoretically await somebody.
Yes.
Okay.
And that sin was sometimes attributed to activities that, upon closer examination, did not appear to be worthy of the word sin.
Right. Would you say that the reasoning was different in actually leaving the faith?
How I just decided I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know. I know in looking back, when we go to weddings, or particularly when we go to Catholic funerals, if the homily gets into the hell and da-da-da-da-da, and it's like, no, I can't go there. I can't visualize a punishing God. I also, at some point, came to the realization that, as I said to you the other day, one of the lines that stuck with me from the movie about Thomas à Becket was God made man to serve him wittily in the tangle of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have somebody else telling you what God did and did not expect of you, and that there would be punishment if what they thought was the case, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. If I really put my brain to it, if God is who everybody thinks God isn't going to say, you're Jewish, so you can't come, and you never were baptized, and so you can't come. That isn't the way we are supposed to think of God as all-knowing, all-powerful. That doesn't square with how we picture God in our lives.
Mm-hmm. So meaning if God is omnibenevolent, omniscient, and omnipotent, the behavior didn't check out.
The behavior doesn't check out. And also what doesn't check out is, wait a minute, why is this poor person born with a cerebral palsy, or why would a God do that? I mean, is it just to put you to a test down here? So it just doesn't make sense.
You're referring to what's called in philosophy the problem of natural evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can understand that.
Yeah. Yes. And why are some of us lucky and some of us so unlucky? It just it doesn't compute much.
So when you left the church, one of the questions we always ask is, where are you theologically now?
Yeah. I don't think I am. If I define theology, how do you mean it?
Let's put it this way. If I had to ask you, are you a theist? Would you say that you are?
I don't think so.
If I asked you, are you agnostic? Would you say that you're agnostic?
I would say probably so.
Okay. What I did was sort of do a large cut first, and then we can sort of get into small details potentially. But as soon as someone says that they're agnostic, then I suppose you could say I'm an agnostic Catholic, but that's sort of a contradiction in terms.
Correct.
In some ways.
Correct.
Because I suppose you could be a Catholic with doubts, but Catholics with doubts don't stay Catholic very long, or they don't keep the doubts.
That's right.
In my experience. Obviously, you have more experience than I do here. I'm just speaking as somebody who's talked to a lot of former Catholics.
Some Catholics like to be Catholic and choose what they want to be Catholic about. So they like to go to church, or they like, but they don't like confession anymore. So
right.
they don't like birth control.
It's called grocery store Judaism.
Yes.
In Judaism.
Yeah, same thing.
Pick and choose.
Yes.
Can I ask? I'm sure there were some parts of this, something that you found useful or endearing or comforting or something. What made you not do that? Why not simply have your doubts in private?
That's such a good question. When you go that deeply into something, 15 years worth, and before those 15 years of complete dedication to the idea you were brought up, it just didn't, I don't know, it just wouldn't, I can't see myself pulling it apart and saying, I'll take this, but I don't want that, because that's not what it was all about. It was all about a theology that you believed in, and a faith that you had, or you didn't. You didn't pick and choose. Mm-hmm. If you were really a loyalist in the faith.
So, I mean, it's also the things that you said were claims you had a problem with. Those are core claims of Catholicism. Those aren't side claims.
Right.
They're not even side claims of Christianity, broadly. Meaning the three O's, as they're referred to in apologetics, right? Omniscience, omnibenevolence, all that. Those are in many ways core theological claims of Christianity. And to some extent Judaism too, and I suppose, depending on who you ask, Islam. It's all the Abrahamic faiths kind of have that as a core thing. So at this point you sort of consider yourself an agnostic, okay? Separate from that, what is your stance on religion? I'm not asking Catholicism specifically.
I understand.
How do you view religion?
When I hear the word religion, I generally associate it with an ideology.
Yes.
And no, I guess my stance is, well, I have lots of thoughts about that. If religion works for you, go for it.
Yeah.
It's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
Do I think it's worked in the world? No, because I think you go back to the Crusades, you look at any part of the world, a lot of the wars are fought over religion. And so if I hear, and I try not to go here, but I sometimes do, well, she's really religious, I think, oh dear. Are we going to have anything in common because we come from such a different perspective on what the world is all about? So religion to me is something I can't do with that. I can't do anything about, but I don't have to embrace it.
No.
And so I don't.
Okay. Fair enough. I realize we're kind of backtracking a little bit. The same as I asked you if there were any negative repercussions when you left the order, because in your case there's two big plateaus, right, kind of, and then
right
now you are as you are, more or less, obviously. It seemed like the repercussions involved in leaving the order were relatively mild. When you I'm sure you never sort of did any public. Very few people actually make public declarations.
Right.
I am leaving the faith.
Right.
No one does that practically. Actually, in my experience, almost no one does, because it's not like you can get up in church and just turn to the priest and go, "I'm done." And yeah, that's not a thing. I suppose you could, but I've never heard of anyone doing that. People tend to just stop going to church as often, right, and then they stop going to church right, entirely, and then they realize that they're not going to church anymore. They haven't been to church in 6 months, and oh my God, I don't go to church anymore. Where would you say that what were the repercussions like from leaving the faith, not the order?
I don't recall any major ones. I think that Jerry and I both knew that our families, now my mother was deceased, and my mother wouldn't have cared. Mm-hmm. I don't think my sister would have cared. I think Jerry's family would have been a little bit different. And so I think we knew that the family, that it would be a difficult thing for the family to understand. Mm-hmm. But we were never not invited for dinner, or we were never shunned, mm-hmm, by Jerry's family. And friends, you know, our friends were probably broad enough at that point in time that probably didn't make much of a difference. So I don't remember a lot of social repercussions. Mm-hmm. I don't know what, you know, I stayed in touch with some of the women who were still in the order. I don't know what they think or didn't think, because our lives didn't intersect that much. Mm-hmm. I mean, did I know that people wouldn't understand? Yeah, I knew. Mm-hmm. But you know, you do what you can't act. You can't act as though you believe when you don't.
Well, you can't.
Yeah, well, I can't.
There are people who can, but you can't, and I can understand that.
Yeah, I can say, if people say, you know, I can just hardly wait to die because I want to be united with my loved ones, I'll just say, well, you know, whatever works, and hope that's true. And I won't say, who are you kidding? I mean, I don't.
You're not pugnacious about it.
I'm not. Yeah. If it works and you think you're going to, you know, the biggest loss when you make this leap is that loss, that nobody up there is going to make it all right, that you're not going to leave this world and go to another world that is much fairer, nicer. That's not it. So when you have to come to grips with what I call, and other people, non-being, it's like, I'm not going to be. I am not going to be. That is a stark realization that it's like, ooh, that's interesting. So you lose the comfort. And you lose the comfort of knowing, well, this is happening because it's God's will. It's all going to work out. You lose that comfort. So it's a real loss. But, I don't think you can. I think you either have faith or you don't. And if you don't, I don't think that you're I couldn't be very successful in acting like I did.
That answers one of the questions that we always ask, which is, how's your life different now?
My life working out?
How's your life different now?
Oh, different.
Yeah, and in this case, actually, your life is as different as it could get. I mean, if you had stayed in the order,
oh, yes,
things would have been very different. But even if we just compare you now to, let's say, you as a layperson Catholic, how would you say it? Other than what you just said, because that's a real psychological reality, and I do want to get back to that.
How is it different now than it would have been at what point?
When you left the order, but you were still in the church.
Well,
I know there's been quite a bit of time.
I don't go to church. That's number one.
Yeah.
I don't think in terms of sin. I think in terms of hurting other people.
Okay.
Or in not doing the best I could. But I don't think I'm going to get punished in the hereafter for that.
Right.
Because I'm not sure there is a hereafter that's going to make any difference if I'm going to not be.
Right.
One thing I do miss, although maybe I wouldn't have liked it, I don't know. I think what religion does for people is give them a sense of community.
Yeah.
And I see that even in Jewish folks who are they maybe observe the holidays, but that's about it. But
they're not observing, yeah.
But there's a Jewish community feel that people have, that my friends have. I don't know if all Jewish people do, but my friends, there's a clear affinity. You lose that. I don't have an affinity with a parish or an affinity with a Bible group, or so you're sort of alone.
Okay. I am curious because you've had a lot of religious training.
Yes.
Which probably included a certain amount of philosophy, I imagine.
Yes.
And you've also had quite a bit of time.
Yes.
You are up to now the oldest person I've interviewed for this. How do you deal with that? What you talked about, the loss of certainty. This thing about, you find yourself after you lose your faith. You find yourself in a universe where actually there may not be a ground explanation for everything. And maybe there isn't a hereafter, and maybe no one's really watching out for you upstairs, and, here you are.
I don't know that every single day I deal with it all that well. Sometimes it's like, look, this is how it is. Some days it's like, this is how it is, and it's very frustrating. Some days I'm grateful that sometimes when I read articles about the Catholic Church or the Pope said this or the bishops, I'm thinking, thank God I don't have to listen to that anymore. That's true. On other days there is I think depression is a bit of an overused word, but there is a depression that can come. It's like, wait a minute, I'm 88 years old. Thank God I have a husband, but one of these days I may not. At that point I'm going to be all by myself because I don't have children. I don't know what's going to happen to me going forward. It can be very lonely and very frightening is the wrong word. maybe not. Very, I don't know, I can't think of a good, sobering.
Okay. And I think that leads very, very directly into the last question, if I'm not mistaken, that was on our list, which is, not the last one, there's another couple that I would ask, but do you feel like you had resources when you left? Because what you're describing, this phenomenon of people leaving the faith and suddenly finding themselves sort of, you're at ends. It's like you don't have this sort of mental safety net, which of course people who lose their faith, generally speaking, don't view that safety net as real. But you lose it. Did you feel like you had resources at the time? Do you feel like you have resources now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had some women who stayed in the church but could understand my decision and didn't buy the whole thing lock, stock, and barrel anyway. And then I think my sister, my mother died shortly after I left, but my father had already been deceased. My sister was fine. My sister and her family were fine with it. Let me see. I still worked, and I've always gotten a big sense of meaning. I think what I never lost is my sense of two things, teaching and helping. Those were things that have stayed with me. A way to teach what I know to somebody who maybe would like to know it, or helping somebody who needs help, not in a patronizing way, but in a look. You need to know how to do this. I'm happy to teach you how to do it, or do it for you in that case. And those have been constants. And I think work helped me a lot. I think the volunteering I do helps keep me sane. So I think you find other ways to.
Hey, lad, I'm going to grab some things here.
Sure.
You can edit him out.
I can always do small cuts. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
So that's what I think.
He's not on camera. Okay. What do you feel like, if you received any advice at all, what do you feel like was the best piece of advice, and what do you feel like was the worst piece of advice for somebody who's leaving the faith?
You know, I don't remember. The good news is,
Can't have been that bad if you
I don't remember if it was, unless it was really traumatic or really very unusual. I don't remember, and at some point you don't listen to it anyway. You've done what you've done. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there were people around me that thought I'd made a big mistake, mm-hmm. But I don't remember. And I'm lucky, I guess, because I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I will be honest with you. It is very, very interesting to me, as the first clergy person we've interviewed for this, that relatively speaking, the outcomes from this were very, very, very slight compared to what I was personally expecting walking in. Huh. You're not describing anything. I have heard more traumatic stories from people who were lay people and left as young people, actually.
Absolutely. But think about it.
Yeah.
I was in my mid-30s when I started making these decisions.
Right.
If you're 22 or 23 and your family is going to think about disowning you, because that would be traumatic. I mean, it's a whole, I think when you make these decisions would be a very significant difference in how it affected you. Mm-hmm. I also think how deeply you go into something and how comfortable you feel at the bottom that allows you to come up in terms of religion.
You know how deep the hole is.
Yeah, then it's like, wait, I've done it. I've done the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. No one can say you didn't give it an honest chance.
Nobody can say I didn't give it an honest chance. Yeah. And, people used to not understand, well, you don't go to Mass anymore. Look, I've been to enough Masses in my lifetime to last me a long time. Yeah. So it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I have a lot of other questions for you, but they're not specifically about this. Is there anything that you would like to add? Anything that you think somebody in the position you were in would want to hear, or somebody who's thinking about leaving their faith would want to hear, or?
I guess in the first place, I just do want to say I was very fortunate to have joined, first of all, to have had a supportive family, and secondly, to have joined an order that was very supportive, very avant-garde in their thinking. So that was lucky, and I got a good education, and I'll never regret any of that. I think if you're thinking about it, you really need to listen to yourself. And you really need to feel comfortable in the depths of who you can feel yourself to be, that this is what you're going to do, and that you're not going to look back with regret on it. So, you have to anchor yourself in this is a huge decision, and I better feel okay about making it, because I'm not maybe going to get a lot of applause for doing it.
Okay. Normally, we don't have people on this program. It's on YouTube. I don't know if I would call it a program, but we haven't had a lot of clergy, and we haven't had a lot of Catholics, and definitely not people who are as involved in the church as you are. And we were talking earlier. As you know, the church is not, by my lights, doing too well. It's there, but it's having some issues.
Yeah, but I just read the news. This is why I get grateful. So I read this news headline in the newspaper. Catholic Church is now reverting back. I didn't read the article, did not. But, now some of them want to go back to the Latin Mass. I mean, so it looked to me like we came through it to what looked like a moment of maybe hope, and now it looks like there is a movement within the church that wants to take it back. And so I don't know. It's interesting to see what church of all the Catholic churches that you might want to think about, who's having the problem? Is it the parish? Is it the bishop? Is it the pope? Who is this Catholic Church anyway?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that's another thing. Personally, as a Jew, we refer to the church as the church. It's the church.
Yes.
There are lots of other churches.
That's right.
But if you're Jewish, the church is the Catholic Church, generally speaking.
Yes.
It's the one we have the longest history with.
That's a good point.
And I agree with you, and it has been very interesting. And so I suppose you could say the future is uncertain. We don't know.
The future is uncertain.
We don't know. The future is uncertain. And that might be a good place to wrap up.
Okay.
Okay, unless there's something you wanted to add.
So would you like me to say amen, go in peace?
Do the fingers. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.